Hey everyone, I have here Zane's Golden Dragon Jet from the Ninjago Crystallized sub-theme. It consists of 3 minifigures, 258 pieces, and retails for $34.99. The Golden Dragon Jet reminds me a lot of the Legacy Stormfighter from a few years back, but borrowing some of the design cues, but in a good way. While the Stormfighter leaned towards an F-22, this feels more sci-fi and aerodynamic, especially with just how sleek and low profile it is, similar to the Legacy Kai Fighter, but done better, which I really do enjoy. Zooming into the nose, there's some nice part usage involving a new recolor for one of the core upper jaws introduced earlier this year, but this time in Pearl Gold and Trans Medium Blue. This is actually seen again in Lloyd's Golden Ultra Dragon, albeit it's printed there. Much like its fellow Dragon and Golden Dragon vehicles, it features the Ninjago symbol for R, most like for resistance, prominently on its 2x2 sticker, which I feel helps subtly bridge all of them together and create a unified look while allowing them to each have their own personality, their own style. I also do quite enjoy how the cockpit's windshield sort of continues that trans medium blue to help push that stark icy theme this jet has against a plain snowy white. The armor on the sides of the cockpit I feel is done very well. It has the most reasonable amount of armor without being just overbearing. This 4x3 slope is a new piece for 2022 which I feel is going to be used in a lot of situations where plating is needed but also needs to be kept simple. However, one of the problems with this and what I've noticed with Pearl Gold in general lately is that it's a lot lighter than it should be. I'm not sure if the camera will pick this up, but in person there's a very noticeable difference in the shade of gold between these two pieces, which I feel pairs apart with how quality control with LEGO has been lately. Moving towards the back, you'll start to see what I meant by sleek. It really is just that thin of an aircraft. The wings featured a very simplistic of detailing with the suggestion of the engines that make this hover, while also introducing a great recolor of the classic spinner crown in medium azure. As we build up towards the rear, a lot of the bulking and anglization takes place back here, houses the main flight engines for both speed and thrust, with of course the new armored slopes being used again to suggest just how powerful they are. Funny enough, I believe these are the same wheels that were actually used on the original Stormfighter about a decade ago, which is kind of fitting given what this entire wave of sets represents. You can also angle this back tail fin here to give it a different look when transformed, though it's not intentional. One of my favorite parts about the set, or I suppose the wave in general, is these new marbled large action figure blades in the same colors as the core head. I feel like they're a welcome addition to the vast amount of large blades LEGO has produced over the years and will definitely be used in a lot of construction mocks. Looking at the cockpit again, there's this hard to see sticker here representing the controls with the current target being General Vangelis, who is included in this set. The word warning in jargon is also present here, symbolizing the threat Vangelis poses. Zane just slots in here using the friend seat bracket, but is actually held pretty well in place thanks to a combination of the friction of that particular element and the placement of the windscreen. It has the standard amount of detailing you'd expect with most Ninjago cockpits within the past few years. Actually, speaking of Zane, his armor design weirdly carries over onto the graphic design for the stickers. To me, it feels a bit out of place and doesn't really match with the type of armor going on with the physical detailing. I don't know how else to describe it, but a more mechanical approach to the armor on the jet would automatically feel more natural. The play feature, which also functions like the original Stormfighter, transfers the jet into attack mode, or should I say, shuriken mode? It's definitely a unique look for the jet, which helps set it largely apart from the Stormfighter in the first place. Especially when you set it up right, it almost feels like Zane is piloting a giant version of his own signature weapon. Of course, it is swooshable. Very swooshable, in fact. The overall lightness of the set makes it pretty enjoyable to move it through the air, which is an automatic win for kids interested in the set, or adult collectors who are bored from time to time like myself. Another, obviously very unintentional, I suppose, play feature of the set is the ability to turn the cockpit into a mini escape pod, though that's just due to the natural connection of the Mixels ball joint has to give it the cockpit's angle. Looking at figures, here's Golden Dragon Cole in all his earthy, lava-like glory. We'll look at him separately just due to the sheer ginormous wingspan he has, which goes all the way off camera. This hood is a new for 2022 dual molded element in Pearl Gold and Trans Orange, which surprisingly pipes light in. At least, look at the sides pretty well. His weapon of choice, just like Zane, which we'll look at it a bit, is a simple golden katana. Talking about those wings again though, they're both a new recolor and actually marbled differently to core. Instead of gold on transparent, it's the reverse, which I really think helps the elemental details shine. These are connected to a new, also for 2022, armor which reminds me of the original Stone Warrior pauldrons from 2013, and would also work great for Pixel. Of course, I'm not a fan of the blue pins, but most of the time you won't be seeing that anyways as you're looking at him from the front. The burst of elemental energy in the back with the Ninjago Z reminds me a lot of the classic Energy figures, which, speaking of those, I believe these figures, specifically the Golden Dragon figures, are a worthy successor, and even surpasses them. Especially with all the great transparent elements used on these figures, it's really just exciting to see LEGO embrace and finally use them to their full potential. The headprint is a very reminiscent of the core Spinjitzu training figures, which I personally hope means a potential gimmick set for Cole in 2043, but that's just being very helpful, seeing as gimmick sets for Cole are very few in between. Figures from left to right are Cole and Zane and Disgraced King, now General Vangelis, who's literally been crystallized. I actually want to talk about the weapons first, specifically Vangelis's, because that right there, is finally a proper mold for the Scythe of Quakes, which has frankly been a long time coming. While it's not one-to-one, it's an amazing representation of what LEGO is capable of. Of course, you can't have the Skull Sorcerer without his iconic wings, which are clipped on to a new, for this season, crystalline armor, which is used across most of the generals and some of the Vengeful warriors. They also reused the Skull Sorcerer mask from Master of the Mountain, which I'm glad to be seeing again. His figure, being mostly gunmetal gray, makes me wonder if this is actually Vengestone armor. As for Zane, he reuses the mask from the 2020 Legacy Pack, this time though with an Ninjago R, which doesn't make as much sense as most of the figures suggest gold to be armor and not cloth, but nonetheless it is a nice piece to get. Graphic design work for both figures is solid, with either or being appropriately armored even without the accessories. While it's not as noticeable at first, that's actually a new face print for Vangelis that takes the green details of the original and turns them purple, which is something I'm honestly fine with for the sake of consistency. Something interesting I've noticed with Zane here, and the other Golden Ninja from the wave, is the armor setup for each of them is reminiscent of their ZX figures, combined with layering the armor on top of existing suits like the hero robes, which honestly I think is an unintentional, but neat callback. I'm also as content with the design in the back, which in a rare occurrence actually continues to armor in a way that makes sense. There's nothing much interesting going on in the back with Vangelis though, however most of the time that would be covered by the armor and wings anyways. With 2 exclusive minifigures and a solid build that's also enjoyable, the entire set itself is fantastic. What you end up paying for here doesn't have any fluff and focuses solely on the gent, which I think only works to the benefit of it. I feel like kids and collectors are going to be happy with picking this set up alone, especially when you get a conflict out of the box. Anyways, this has been Marty from Bio Ninja Bricks. See you next time.